Imagine for a moment that everything you have been taught about right and wrong is not an absolute truth, but a carefully crafted illusion. That morality, far from being a universal law, is in fact a system created to shape and control human behavior. What if the concepts of good and evil, which have been ingrained in us since childhood, were not eternal truths but tools of power? What if everything you believed about morality was designed not to liberate, but to domesticate you? Today we are diving into one of the most controversial and unsettling ideas in philosophy, the claim that morality as we know it is not a reflection of some higher truth, but a construct imposed upon us to maintain order and submission. This radical idea, developed by Friedrich Nietzsche in Beyond Good and Evil, challenges the very foundation of how we understand ethics, justice, and human nature. And by the end of this journey, you will be confronted with a truth so powerful that it may completely change the way you see the world and yourself. Nietzsche was not merely a philosopher. He was a challenger of conventions, a destroyer of illusions, a thinker who dared to look beyond the comforting veil of morality and face the raw, often brutal reality of human existence. His work, Beyond Good and Evil, is an invitation to move past the simplistic dualities of right and wrong and embrace a higher, more profound perspective on life. But to grasp the full depth of his argument, we must first understand how morality itself came to be and why it may not be what we think it is. Consider this. When you say that something is good or evil, what do you really mean? Most people assume these terms refer to objective moral truths, ideas that exist independently of human opinions, written into the fabric of reality itself. But Nietzsche argued that morality is not an inherent feature of the universe. Instead, it is a historical and social construct, one that has been shaped and reshaped over centuries by those in power. According to Nietzsche, there are two primary types of morality: master morality and slave morality. Master morality is the morality of the strong, the morality of those who affirm life, take risks, and create their own values. It is rooted in personal excellence, power, and the affirmation of one's own existence. Slave morality, on the other hand, is the morality of the weak, those who lack power and influence. It is based on resentment, on the rejection of strength, and on the glorification of humility, meekness, and suffering as virtues. Slave morality, Nietzsche argued, was born out of a deep resentment toward those who are strong, successful, and independent. Rather than striving to elevate themselves, the weak created a moral system that demonized power and strength while praising submission and self-sacrifice. This shift in values was, according to Nietzsche, one of the most significant transformations in human history, a transformation that led to the widespread adoption of moral codes that suppress individuality and encourage conformity. But here's where things become truly radical. Nietzsche did not simply argue that morality is subjective. He claimed that traditional morality, particularly the morality derived from religious traditions, is fundamentally anti-life. He saw it as a system designed not to help individuals flourish, but to make them obedient and dependent. In his view, religious morality suppresses human instincts, discourages ambition, and teaches people to feel guilty for their natural desires. It turns strength into a vice and weakness into a virtue. This is why Nietzsche famously proclaimed, "God is dead." He was not merely making a statement about religion. He was declaring that the moral structures built around the idea of God were crumbling. The values that had once held society together were losing their power, and humanity was standing at the edge of a great transformation. But this transformation was not without danger. Without the guiding force of traditional morality, what would take its place? Nietzsche's answer to this question was both liberating and terrifying. Beyond good and evil, there is the overman, the individual who has broken free from inherited moral constraints and created a new set of values based on personal strength, creativity, and willpower. The overman does not live according to the rules imposed by society, tradition, or religion. He is his own lawgiver, his own judge, and his own source of meaning. But before we can fully understand the overman, we must first confront the implications of Nietzsche's critique of morality. If good and evil are not objective truths, but perspectives shaped by those in power, then how do we determine what is truly valuable in life? Are we truly free to create our own morality, or are we still trapped in the remnants of a system that no longer serves us? This is not just a philosophical question, it is a personal challenge, because at some point in your life, you have undoubtedly felt the pressure of societal expectations, the weight of imposed moral standards, the fear of stepping outside the lines. But Nietzsche forces us to ask, are these values truly ours, or have they been imposed upon us? Do we act out of genuine conviction, or are we simply following the rules laid out for us? The answers to these questions could change everything. And in the next section, we will take this journey even further, exploring how Nietzsche's ideas on power, will, and human nature can be applied in our daily lives. Because this is not just a theory, it is an invitation to challenge everything you have been taught, an invitation to take control of your own destiny, and the most shocking revelation of all is still to come. Are you ready? If everything we have been taught about morality is a construct, if good and evil are not universal laws but tools of power, then what does this mean for the way we live? If the values that govern our world were shaped by those seeking to control rather than liberate, then how can we begin to break free? Nietzsche's answer lies in one of his most powerful and unsettling ideas, the will to power. Unlike traditional philosophies that seek to define life through morality, reason, or metaphysics, Nietzsche argued that the driving force of all existence is not truth or goodness, but power. Every living being, from the smallest insect to the most ambitious human, is propelled by an innate force, the will to grow, to expand, to assert, to dominate. This is not mere survival. The will to power is more than just staying alive. It is the deep primal urge to overcome, to impose meaning upon a chaotic world, to shape reality rather than be shaped by it. But here is where things become truly provocative. Nietzsche believed that most people have been conditioned to suppress their will to power. They have been taught that ambition is sinful, that desire is dangerous, that striving for greatness is arrogance rather than a natural expression of life. This suppression, he argued, is not accidental. It is a necessary function of slave morality, which seeks to keep people small, weak, and dependent. By teaching people to reject their natural instincts, slave morality ensures that they remain obedient to the structures that control them. This leads to a troubling question. If traditional morality suppresses the will to power, what happens when we break free? What happens when we stop living according to the inherited values of the past and begin creating our own? Nietzsche believed that this transformation was necessary for humanity's evolution. He envisioned a new kind of individual, one who would rise beyond conventional morality and embrace the full intensity of life. He called this figure the Overman. The Overman is not simply a stronger or more intelligent person. He is someone who has completely transcended the limitations imposed by society and religion. He does not seek validation from others. He does not conform to the morality of the masses. Instead, he creates his own values, his own meaning, his own purpose. This is a radical idea because it implies that there is no given meaning to life. There is no divine law that dictates what we should do. No cosmic justice that ensures good will be rewarded and evil punished. There is only life itself, raw, chaotic, and open to interpretation. And in the face of this terrifying freedom, the Overman does not retreat into illusions of security. He embraces the challenge of existence. He does not ask, what is the meaning of life? Instead, he asks, what meaning will I create? But if this is true, then we must confront an even deeper realization. Most people are not ready to become overmen. Most people cling to the comfort of externally imposed values because the burden of creating their own is too great. This is why Nietzsche did not see the Overman as an inevitability, but as a rare and difficult achievement. Few will ever have the courage to break free from the herd and step into the unknown. And this is where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes deeply personal. Because if the Overman is the future of humanity, then the question becomes, are you ready to take that step? Are you ready to abandon the inherited moral codes that have shaped your existence and take responsibility for creating your own path? This is not a simple process. It requires a complete re-evaluation of everything you have been taught. It requires strength, independence, and an unshakable will to stand alone. But the reward is unparalleled, true freedom. Not the illusion of freedom granted by society, but the genuine, untamed freedom of one who answers only to himself. And yet, there is something even more unsettling in Nietzsche's vision. Because if morality is a construct, if good and evil are mere perspectives, then we must ask, What happens to justice? What happens to human rights? What happens to the principles that hold civilization together? Are these too illusions? Are they simply tools of power used by one group to control another? These questions lead us into dangerous territory, because if we follow Nietzsche's logic to its conclusion, we arrive at a world without moral absolutes, a world where strength and creativity are the only true measures of value, a world where the individual must take full responsibility for his own existence, with no external guide to lean on. And here lies the greatest challenge of all. How do we reconcile this radical freedom with the need for structure and order? How do we move beyond traditional morality without descending into chaos? Is it possible to create a new morality? One that is not based on fear, weakness, or submission, but on strength, creativity, and self-mastery? This is where Nietzsche leaves us, not with answers, but with a challenge. The challenge to break free, the challenge to think for ourselves, the challenge to take our own lives into our own hands and forge something new. But the final, most shocking truth of all, the revelation that changes everything, has yet to be revealed, and in the next section, we will uncover it. Because there is one last piece of Nietzsche's philosophy that holds the key to understanding everything, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. Are you ready to face it? If you have followed this journey so far, you have already begun to see the world through Nietzsche's eyes. You have questioned morality, challenged the notion of absolute good and evil, and confronted the idea that traditional values may be nothing more than tools of control. But now we must go even deeper, into the very core of Nietzsche's most unsettling and transformative idea. Everything we have explored so far leads to one ultimate conclusion. If morality is not absolute, if human beings are driven by the will to power, and if the Overman represents the future of humanity, then how should we live? How should we act in a world where values are created, not discovered? Nietzsche's answer is as bold as it is terrifying. Eternal recurrence. Eternal recurrence is one of the most misunderstood and radical ideas in all of philosophy. It is not merely a thought experiment, it is a challenge, one that forces you to reconsider the way you live your life. Imagine this. What if, at the moment of your death, you were told that you would have to live this exact life over again, not once, but endlessly? Every decision, every joy, every mistake, every regret, repeated in an infinite cycle, with no escape. Would you curse this fate or would you embrace it? Nietzsche believed that the way we respond to this idea reveals everything about our relationship with existence. If the thought of reliving your life fills you with dread, it is a sign that you are not living authentically, that you are in some way betraying your own nature. But if you can look at your life and say yes, if you can affirm every moment, every struggle, and every triumph, then you have reached the highest state of being. You have transcended the fear of suffering and embraced life in its totality. This is what it means to go beyond good and evil. It is not just rejecting traditional morality, it is affirming life itself, with all its chaos, pain, and uncertainty. It is saying yes to existence, not because it is perfect, but because it is yours. This is the mindset of the Overman, not someone who seeks happiness in the conventional sense, but someone who takes full ownership of their existence, without hesitation, without regret. But let us pause for a moment and reflect. How many people truly live this way? How many of us accept our lives as they are, without wishing for escape, without hoping for some final reward or divine justice? Most people live as if life is a burden, as if suffering is something to be avoided at all costs. They seek comfort, security, and validation from others. They live in anticipation of a future that will somehow justify their present struggles. But Nietzsche tells us that this is an illusion. The only moment that matters is now, and the only life worth living is the one you would choose to live again endlessly. This is where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes more than just theory. It becomes a call to action. Because if you take eternal recurrence seriously, you can no longer afford to waste your time. You can no longer live in fear. Every decision becomes infinitely significant because you are not just making it for today, you are making it for eternity. So ask yourself, if you had to live this moment forever, would you change anything? Are you living in a way that you would willingly repeat for all eternity? If the answer is no, then what are you waiting for? What is stopping you from becoming the creator of your own values, the master of your own fate? Nietzsche's philosophy is not for the faint of heart. It demands courage, responsibility, and an unbreakable will to shape your own destiny. It asks you to stand alone, to reject the comforting lies of conventional morality, and to embrace the raw, untamed reality of existence. But those who dare to take this path will find something that few ever experience: true freedom. But there is one last truth, one final revelation that ties everything together, a truth so profound that it may completely change the way you see yourself and the world around you. In the next and final section, we will uncover it, because there is one final piece of Nietzsche's vision that brings everything into focus, and once you see it, you can never return to the way you were before. Are you ready for the ultimate truth? And now, we arrive at the final and most unsettling revelation, the truth that brings everything together, the realization that once grasped, forever changes the way you see the world and yourself. If we have followed Nietzsche's path this far, we have dismantled the illusion of absolute morality. We have questioned everything we were taught about good and evil. We have confronted the reality of the will to power, the necessity of creating our own values, and the challenge of living in such a way that we would embrace eternal recurrence. But now comes the final question. If we reject conventional morality, if we take full responsibility for our existence, if we create our own values, then what happens to meaning itself? This is the terrifying question at the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy. Because once we remove the inherited structures that have guided humanity for centuries, once we step beyond good and evil, what is left? What stops us from falling into chaos, into nihilism, into the belief that life itself is meaningless? And here is where Nietzsche delivers his greatest and most crucial warning. The death of God is not just the death of religion, it is the death of meaning as we know it. When Nietzsche declared God is dead, he was not celebrating. He was warning us of the crisis to come. The collapse of traditional morality does not automatically lead to liberation. It leads to a void that must either be filled by new values or consumed by despair. This is what Nietzsche feared most. Not that people would reject religion, but that they would replace it with nothing. That without external moral systems to guide them, they would fall into nihilism, the belief that life has no purpose, no direction, no significance. He saw this as the great danger of modernity, a world without faith, without absolutes, without purpose, drifting aimlessly, filling the void with distractions, entertainment, or shallow ideologies that offer comfort but no real foundation. And so Nietzsche's final challenge is the most difficult of all. Can you create your own meaning? Can you, without relying on inherited beliefs, without leaning on the crutches of conventional morality, without seeking validation from others, look at existence in its purest form and say, yes, this is enough. I will create meaning from this. This is the ultimate test of the overman. Because the overman is not just someone who rejects old values, he is someone who replaces them with his own. Someone who does not surrender to despair, who does not seek escape, but who embraces life fully and imposes his own purpose upon it. He does not look to external authorities to tell him what is right or wrong, good or evil. He decides, he creates, he becomes the meaning of his own life. And here is where Nietzsche leaves us, not with comfort, but with a challenge that only a few will ever have the strength to face. Most will turn away, seeking refuge in the familiar, in the safety of inherited beliefs, in the illusion of objective morality. But for those who dare, for those who choose to step beyond good and evil, to embrace the will to power, to create their own path, there is a reward unlike any other: true freedom. Not the illusion of freedom given by society, but the raw, untamed, exhilarating freedom of one who stands completely on his own, who has looked into the abyss and not turned away, who has chosen his own destiny rather than accepting one imposed upon him. And so, the final question is yours to answer. Will you accept the challenge? Will you step beyond good and evil, beyond inherited morality, beyond the illusions of the past, and take full responsibility for your own existence? Or will you turn back, retreating into the comfort of the familiar, seeking security rather than freedom? The choice is yours, and whatever you choose, remember this: Nietzsche's philosophy is not meant to comfort, it is meant to awaken. It is meant to shake you to your core, to force you to see the world not as you wish it to be, but as it truly is. And now, having seen this truth, having confronted this challenge, the only question left is, what will you do with it? Thanks for looking.